Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, context is everything. This is John Michael at Context is Everything Media Network, episode 34 of the Ambient Classroom. Now, in the Ambient Classroom, I read this textbook, World History textbook, published in 2001, cover to cover. I'm reading a section a day. I'm on page 147 of 1007. The purpose is to build my context because of the name of the channel and because I think it's a good idea. Chapter 6, Section 5, we're in the Roman Empire, and Section 5 is titled The Long Decline. Setting the scene. More than 1,500 years ago, the western half of the Roman Empire stumbled into ruin. At the time, the spectacle of decline and defeat left Romans stunned. 1 second. Charger. Hope y'all having a good evening, morning, or afternoon. At the same time, the spectacle of decline and defeat left Romans stunned. Some looked for reasons for the decay. The Roman historian Ammianus Marcellinus pointed to declining values. The Roman historian Ammianus Marcellinus pointed to declining values. Centering of law, he wrote, centers of law, he wrote, are now filled with ridiculous amusements, and the libraries are closed forever, like so many graves. Marcellinus witnessed moral decay among Romans of all classes. Of the powerful, he complained that they fall away into error and vice. For the lower class, he reported that some spend the whole night in the wine shops, or else they play at dice. He was also alarmed about external threats to the empire, such as the invading Huns, who he feared could force their way through all obstacles. At the end of Roman greatness did not occur overnight. Decay had set in centuries before the final fall. In the late 200s, for example, the empire was divided into two parts, each ruled by a co-emperor. A complex contribution of problems led to the decline and fall of the Western Roman Empire. Sharing power. Co-emperors Diocletian and Maximian shared the responsibility of ruling and defending the empire. Both established mobile imperial courts so they could move swiftly to wherever a crisis broke out. Crisis and reform. Heading. Crisis and reform. After the death of Emperor Marcus Aurelius in 180 AD, the golden age of the Pax Romana ended. For the next 100 years, political and economic turmoil rocked the Roman Empire. Marcus Aurelius being the Stoic closest to philosopher king as Plato's ideal leader. Subheading: Struggles for power. During this period, a disruptive political pattern emerged. Again and again, emperors were overthrown by political intriguers or ambitious generals who seized power with the support of their troops. Those who rose to the imperial throne in this way ruled for just a few months or years until they too were overthrown or assassinated. In one 50-year period, at least 26 emperors reigned. Only one died of natural causes. Political violence and instability, rather than order and efficiency, thus became the rule. Economic and social problems. At the same time, the empire was shaken by disturbing social and economic trends. High taxes to support the army and the bureaucracy placed heavy burdens on business people and small farmers. Farmland that had been overcultivated for too many years lost its productivity. Many poor farmers left their land and sought protection from wealthy landowners. Living on large estates, they worked for the landowners and farmed small plots for themselves. Although technically free, they were not allowed to leave the land. Emperor Diocletian. Subheading. In 284, the Emperor Diocletian set out to restore order. To make the empire easier to govern, he divided it into two parts. He kept control of the wealthier eastern part himself, but appointed a co-emperor to rule the western provinces. The co-emperor was responsible to Diocletian, who retained absolute power. Diocletian tried to increase the prestige of the empire, emperor by surrounding himself with elaborate ceremonies. He wore purple robes embroidered with gold and a crown encrusted with jewels. Anyone who approached the throne had to kneel and kiss the hem of the emperor's robe. Diocletian also took steps to end the empire's economic decay, to slow inflation or the rapid rise of prices. He fixed prices for goods and services. Other laws forced farmers to remain on the land. In cities, sons were required to follow their father's occupations. These rules were meant to ensure steady production of food and other goods. Subheading. Emperor Constantine. Emperor Constantine. In 312, a talented general, Constantine, gained the throne. As emperor, Constantine continued Diocletian's reforms. More important, he took two steps that changed the course of European history. First, as you've read, Constantine granted toleration to Christians. By doing so, he encouraged the rapid growth of Christianity within the empire and guaranteed its future success. Second, he built a new capital, Constantinople, on the Bosporus, the strait that connects the Black and Mediterranean seas. By making his capital there, Constantine made the eastern portion of the empire as the central power. The Western Roman Empire was in decline, but the Eastern Roman Empire, which had more people and greater resources, would prosper for centuries to come. Subheading. Mixed results. The reforms of Diocletian and Constantine had mixed results. They revived the economy, and by increasing the power of government, they helped hold the empire together for another century. Still, reforms failed to stop the long-term decline. In the end, internal problems combined with attacks from outside to bring the empire down. Heading. Foreign invasions. For centuries, Rome had faced attacks from the Germanic people who lived east of the Rhine and north of the Danube rivers. When Rome was powerful, the legions of the frontiers were successful in holding back the invaders. Some of the Germanic peoples who lived along the borders learned Romans' ways and became allies of the Romans. Subheading, Impact of the Huns. Impact of the Huns. As early as 200 AD, wars in East Asia set off a chain of events that would eventually overwhelm Rome. Thousands of miles to the west, those wars sent the Huns and nomadic peoples, a nomadic people, migrating across Central Asia. By 350, the Huns reached Eastern Europe. These skilled riders fought fierce battles and dislodged the Germanic peoples in their path. The Visigoths, Ostrogoths, and other Germanic people crossed into Roman territory seeking safety. Men armed with spears moved in bands along with women and children, carts and herds, hoping to settle on Roman land. With the empire in decline, Roman legions were hard pressed to halt the invading peoples. Under pressure from attacks, the Roman Empire surrendered first Britain, then France, then Spain. It was only a matter of time before foreign invaders marched into Italy and took over Rome itself. This is an important subheading. Rome defeated. In 378 AD, when a Roman army tried to turn back the Visigoths at give me a second on reading this word. Adrianople. In 378 AD, when the Roman army tried to turn back Visigoths at Adrianople, it suffered a stunning defeat. Roman powers was fading. New waves of invaders were soon hammering at Rome's borders, especially in the west. In 410 AD, the Visigoth general Alaric overran Italy, plundered Rome. Meanwhile, the Vandals moved through Gaul, France, and Spain into North Africa. Gradually, the Germanic peoples occupied more and more of Western Roman Empire. For Rome, the worst was yet to come. Starting in 434, the Hun leader Attila embarked on a savage campaign of conquest across much of Europe. Christians called Attila the Scourge of God because they believed his attacks were a punishment for the sins of humankind. Attila died in 453. Although his empire collapsed soon after, the Hun invasion sent still more Germanic peoples fleeing into Roman Empire. Finally, in 476, Odoacer, a German leader, ousted the emperor in Rome. Odoacer, a Germanic leader, ousted the emperor in Rome in 476. Later, historians referred to that event as the fall of Rome. By then, however, Rome had already lost many of its territories, and Roman power in the West had ended. Heading: Causes of the fall of Rome. The passing of Rome's power and greatness was a major turning point in history of Western civilization. Why did Rome fall? Modern historians identify a number of interrelated causes. Subheading: Military causes. Perhaps the most obvious cause for Rome's fall was the Germanic invasions. Still, these attacks were successful in part because Roman legions of late empire lacked the discipline and training of past Roman armies to meet its needs for soldiers. Rome hired mercenaries, or foreign soldiers serving for pay, to defend its borders. Many were German warriors who, according to some historians, felt little loyalty to Rome. Political causes. Political problems also contributed to Rome's decline. First, as the government became more oppressive and authoritarian, it lost the support of the people. Growing numbers of corrupt officials undermined loyalty too. So did frequent civil wars over succession to the imperial throne. Again and again, rival armies battled to have their commanders chosen as emperor. Perhaps most important, dividing the empire at a time when it was under attack may have weakened beyond repair. The richer Western Roman Empire did little to help the West. The richer Eastern Roman Empire did little to help the West. Economic causes. Economic causes for the fall of Rome. Economic problems were widespread in the empire. Heavier and heavier taxes were required to support the vast government bureaucracy and huge military establishment. At the same time, reliance on slave labor discouraged Romans from exploring new technology. The wealth of the empire dwindled as farmers abandoned their land and the middle classes sank into poverty. Some scholars have suggested that climatic change. What? Climatic? There's a hyphen. It's a word that I'm kind of whatever. Some scholars have suggested that climatic change was yet another reason for reduced agricultural productivity. Climatic? They call it climatic. They call it climate change now. I guess that's why I'm confused. Climatic change was yet another reason for reduced agricultural productivity. In addition, the population itself declined as war and epidemic diseases swept the empire. Social causes. For centuries, worried Romans pointed to the decline in values such as patriotism, discipline, and devotion to duty on which the empire was built. In need to replace citizen soldiers with mercenaries testified to the decline of patriotism. The upper class, which had once provided leaders devoted itself to luxury, and self-interest. Besides being costly, providing bread and circuses, many also have undermined the self-reliance of the masses. Besides being costly, providing bread and circuses may have also undermined the self-reliance of the masses. Bread and circuses meaning that was something that they did centuries before the fall to appease the people, to give them spectacles to watch, like the Super Bowl. But they did so with gladiators and like the ship wars that they would have inside of a Colosseum, which is pretty bizarre to imagine, that they would fill a Colosseum with water and fight ships in the middle of a Colosseum. I can hardly picture it. That sounds like a real spectacle. Did Rome fall? Final subheading of the section. Although we talk of the fall of Rome, the Roman Empire did not disappear from the map in 476. An emperor still ruled the Eastern Roman Empire, which later became known as the Byzantine Empire, and lasted for another 1,000 years. The phrase, the fall of Rome, is in fact shorthand for a long, slow change from one way of life to another. Roman civilization survived the events of 476. In Italy, people continued to live much as they had before, though under new rulers. Many still spoke Latin and obeyed Roman laws. Over the next centuries, however, German customs and languages replaced much of Roman culture. Old Roman cities crumbled, and Roman roads disappeared. Still, the Christian Church preserved elements of Roman civilization. In later chapters, you'll read how Rome and Christian traditions gave rise to medieval civilization in Western Europe. That kind of hits the 22-minute mark real well. So I'm going to wish you a good morning or a good evening or a good afternoon, whatever it is that you're at, and remind you that context is everything. What do I mean? What do I mean by that? I guess you'll just have to tune in and find out. My name is John Michael here at Context is Everything Media Network.